Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association's webinar series on grants and funding resources. My name is Glenda Toledo, and I am IANTA's Education Manager, and today I will be serving as your webinar moderator. For those of you who are not familiar with IANTA, we are the only national organization that defines, introduces, grows, and sustains American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values. We provide tourism-related education to tribes across the United States, and in this webinar series, we are working with our federal partners that have grants available for tribes. Today, we are presenting grant programs and fellowships at the National Endowment for the Arts, tips for submitting a competitive application. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. You will find that in your control panel, and I will facilitate the questions and answers session at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar is presented by Cheryl Shiley and Courtney Spearman. Cheryl is a folk and traditional arts specialist at the National Endowment for the Arts, overseeing the National Heritage, Fellowships, and State Folk Art Partnership programs. She is a music industry degree and came to the Arts Endowment after working for various arts nonprofit organizations in New York City and Washington, D.C. Courtney is a design specialist at the National Endowment for the Arts and managing the design grant program and the agency's relationship with the design field. Trained as a landscape architect and architectural historian, Courtney joined the Arts Endowment after working in practice and for a nonprofit landscape advocacy in Washington, D.C. Please welcome Cheryl and Courtney.
Great. Thank you, Linda. And hello, everyone. We're very excited to be here. Greetings from the National Endowment for the Arts. And my name is Cheryl Shiley. And as Linda mentioned, I'm a program specialist in folk and traditional arts. And Courtney and I are very excited to share with you some of our funding opportunities and programs today. So our agenda will begin first with a little background on the Arts Endowment, a review of grants for organizations with some examples of projects that have received support, a review of how to apply, and we'll end with two national initiatives that we think will be of interest to you, the National Heritage Fellowships and the Citizens Institute on Rural Design. So first off, what is the National Endowment for the Arts? We are an independent federal agency founded in 1965. Our mission is to strengthen the creative capacity of our communities by providing all Americans with diverse opportunities for arts participation. We are the only arts funder in America, public or private, that supports the arts in all 50 states and U.S. territories. Staying true to the national in our name, we are also the only funder to make an award in all 435 congressional districts every single year. Our vision is for a nation in which every American benefits from arts engagement and every community recognizes and celebrates its aspirations and achievements through the arts. We also are partners with state governments and other federal agencies and departments. And here is how we do that. We do this by awarding grants, conducting and funding arts research, managing national initiatives, offering free resources like weekly podcasts, daily blogs, and quarterly magazine publications, in addition to discipline-specific podcasts and publications. Primarily, we are a grant-making agency, and today we'll introduce 3 different funding opportunities with the hope of getting your creative juices flowing. Each of these grant programs requires a one-to-one match, which means if you ask us for $10,000, you'll need to have at least $20,000 in costs, and you need to bring at least $10,000 to the table. You can meet the match a variety of ways. You can do that with in-kind goods or donated time, staff time, cash, other grants or donations, or earned revenue. just not with other federal funds. All of these funding opportunities are open to tribal entities and other government entities, nonprofit organizations, and universities. So first, I'll start off with Challenge America. This is a program explicitly designed to extend the reach of underserved communities across the country. Though we do work with underserved communities in all of our grant programs, for this particular category, underserved includes those whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited by geography, ethnicity, economics, or disability. The grants are limited to $10,000 and are for programs in 3 specific categories: guest artists, public art projects, or cultural tourism projects. The deadline is in April, for funding beginning in the following January. So our first of 2 examples of a Challenge America grant is in 2018, we awarded the Cheyenne River Youth Project a Challenge America grant for the Red Can Graffiti Jam. The project was a multi-day festival that blended graffiti, street art, and Lakota culture at the Wainietu-Wawapi Art Park. The event brought nationally renowned graffiti artists to Eagle Butte to create murals and offer street art workshops for Cheyenne River Sioux tribal youth, who were also featured in traditional Lakota dance and drum festivals. This program has also received our town funding, a program which Courtney will talk about later in this presentation. And our second example is in 2018, Art Reach St. Croix in Stillwater, Minnesota, was awarded a Challenge America grant to promote the St. Croix River Valley as an arts destination. The project brought together rural communities in eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin to collaborate on strategic marketing and promotion efforts that highlight the visual, literary, and performing arts assets of the area. It is a very good, it's an idea and a program and a project that illustrates how funding could assist perhaps tribal communities organizing around new tourism initiatives.
Great. This is Courtney Spearman. I'm going to pick up where Cheryl left off and talk about, or introduce at least, our grant for arts projects category. It's what I often refer to as our bread and butter grant program, sort of our primary grant program that serves artistic disciplines all across the agency. GAP grants for arts projects, range from $10,000 to $100,000, again with that required one-to-one match. There are 2 deadlines for most categories, one in February, which is just passed, and then one in July, with roughly 10 months from the time of application to when the funds are available. There are GAP opportunities in each of these disciplines, each with their own specific types of projects and programs, but all using the same basic guidelines and review criteria. We're going to focus on a few examples here, but we highly recommend that you look at the specific information for the discipline of the work you want to apply for and consult with the specialist from that discipline before you apply. Think creatively about where to apply within the agency. Native-focused projects are welcome in all arts disciplines. Let's start with a folk and traditional arts grant. This award was made to the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance for an apprenticeship program and festival. The program features artists from 4 Maine and Maritimes tribes, the Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot, and is designed to both pass along ash and sweetgrass basketry making skills from masters to apprentices, and to share this artistry with the general public. 2018 was the festival's 25th anniversary and included many other aspects of Maine and Maritimes tribal culture beyond traditional basket making. The festival was hosted in partnership with the Abbey Museum in downtown Bar Harbor in a historic area of the Wabanaki homeland. For many visitors, the festival offers a rare opportunity to meet the artists and learn about contemporary Wabanaki arts and cultures, and of course, it's an important opportunity for the artists to sell their wares. This next project goes in a little different direction, but we wanted to highlight it as another example of Native American work being supported. For several years, the Arts Endowment has funded Dance Place in Washington, D.C. to host technical rehearsal residencies and community engagement programming for diverse local and national artists. This year's program features 2 Native artist choreographers, Rosie Simas from the Seneca Nation and Christopher K. Morgan, who is Native Hawaiian. These grants have been made through the dance discipline and reflects the diversity of contemporary Native work being funded by the agency. And now I'm going to focus on a series of grants made through the design program for work with Navajo entrepreneurs. This is a great case study for what can happen with the engagement of a motivated tribal member. In this case, that person is Heather Fleming, pictured here, a Navajo woman who's trained as an industrial designer. While working on design projects in developing countries all over the world, Heather realized her skills could be valuable on Navajo as well. After talking with people and thinking about how best to support her community, she settled on developing a better culture of entrepreneurship. She now runs a program called Change Labs, which was part of Catapult Design, which was her nonprofit firm, until recently when it was launched as a separate organization. So you'll see that these awards were made to Catapult, but Change Labs is now an independent organization. In 2013, Catapult was awarded a grant for Learning Labs, a multi-day convening designed to deliver training modules that could equip students, designers, and entrepreneurs with design methods that can be applied to improve products or businesses. Learning Labs, which is hosted in partnership with the Native American Business Incubator Network, which is part of Grand Canyon Trust, went through 5 or 6 iterations and has morphed into Change Labs now, this separate organization. In 2015, the program was awarded a grant to design a business toolkit called Build Navajo, which seeks to demystify the process for setting up small businesses on Navajo tribal lands for existing and potential entrepreneurs. It's available in English and Navajo and can be found at buildnavajo.org. Oh, hang on a second, we're getting an error message. Okay, Glenda, can you guys hear us? We just got a technical glitch, but I think we're okay. Glenda, can you unmute and let us know you can hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
And we have a couple of participants who say that they can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, guys. All right, we'll carry on. So in 2016, Catapult and NABIN, the Native American Business Incubator Network, hosted a competition for local businesses and organizations dedicated to improving livelihoods on Navajo. The competition called on Navajo entrepreneurs to submit ideas for solutions that address a social challenge in the community. A small number of finalists were selected to receive business development assistance and a chance to pitch their project to local business and government leaders. The winning proposals from that round were then offered design services from Catapult and business development and strategy services from NABIN. And that sort of fellowship model has continued with Change Labs as they've kind of grown into their own organization. In 2018, Catapult shifted their focus to broader cultural challenges on Navajo. Despite evidence of a distinctly entrepreneurial work ethic among Navajo people, many do not see themselves as entrepreneurial or recognize that they are running a business, which limits formalizing, growing, and creating jobs for others. Using design thinking and graphic design, Catapult collaborated with partners and tribal elders to support a narrative of Native American entrepreneurship. The outcome was published as a comic book aimed at tribal youth and a very interesting kind of exploratory study of creating new words around entrepreneurship.
All right, so now I'll pick it up now. This is Cheryl. I want to share with you an organization, Apple Shop, which is located in Whitesburg, Kentucky. It is a multimedia organization that utilizes audio and film media, visual arts, music, theater, and folk arts to document and disseminate the traditional culture and contemporary creativity of the Appalachian region. Their projects directly involve the community and challenge outsider stereotypes, as well as support the community's efforts to achieve equity and celebrate their cultural diversity. One of their main avenues to this end is their community radio station called WMMT-FM, whose mission is to be, as they quote, a 24-hour voice of mountain people's music, culture, and social issues, unquote. In 2016, Appalshop received $10,000 in support of WMMT-FM's Traditional Music Project. This program included concerts, radio broadcasts of traditional music, and music instruction. They also recruited students to learn from master musicians, and instruments were provided for those who were unable to afford them. And out of Tarpon Springs, Florida, is the City of Tarpon Springs, which received support in 2017 and 2018 for $10,000 and $20,000 respectively for the beginning stages and the completion of a documentary project. The film presented an insider's perspective on the traditions of the vibrant Greek community of Tarpon Springs, Florida. The film showcased Greek music, dance, regional foodways, sponge fishing practices, religious customs and rites of passage, including marriage and funerals. Both grants included programming to accompany the film work and its presentation. They conducted workshops about Greek music, monthly music and dance event celebrations, and concerts of rarely performed Greek music. It's interesting to note that this was the Cultural and Civic Services Department of the City of Tarpon Springs that applied for funding. The department is charged with preservation and promotion of the city's heritage, development of cultural and heritage tourism opportunities, and creation of high-quality performing and cultural arts activities for the public. And then next we're going to Massachusetts in New Bedford, Mass. New Bedford Fishing Heritage Center has received support for its biannual Working Waterfront Festival, a celebration of the history and heritage of the nation's #1 fishing port, as they say. The festival is free and focuses on the lifeways of the commercial fishing industry. The festival gives non-fishing community members an inside look into the lives of fishing families, while giving fishing families an opportunity to showcase their skills and talents. Thinking expansively, the festival has featured smaller festivals around the Guatemalan Mayan community, many of whom are employed in the fishing industry there, and feature a display of seafood worker portraits. They also have the Big Boats, Little Boats Festival, which showcased the art of model boat building, as well as occupational skills such as knot tying, net mending, and line splicing. In 2019, they received $20,000 for exhibitions and presentations of ethnic foods, music and dance, and fishing traditions of Norway, Portugal, Canada, Guatemala, El Salvador, Poland, and Cape Verde, and presented all of these things also to area schools. And then here we have the Crooked Road, which is a regional destination covering 19 counties, 4 cities, and over 50 towns and communities in the southwest region of the state of Virginia. And there they celebrate the heritage of the Appalachian music region, Appalachian music year-round. They have 9 major venues, over 60 affiliated venues and festivals, and over 25 wayside exhibits for visitors to have an opportunity to experience the music of that region. In 2019, the Crooked Road received $30,000 in support of the Mountains of Music Homecoming Concert Series, celebrating the musical traditions found in Central Appalachia, and the 2019 Homecoming series featured concerts and performances of old-time, bluegrass, and gospel music, along with traditional dance. And next, I'll hand it over to Courtney.
Great. So this is our last grant category we'll talk about today. This is the Our Town program, which is our creative placemaking program. This is the largest funding opportunity, with grants ranging from $25,000 up to $200,000, and a single deadline each August for funding available the following July. So keep in mind those $25,000 grants have a $50,000 total budget and a $25,000 match minimum from the recipient, and those $200,000 grants are $400,000 or larger projects. So we're getting into a little bigger funding here. Our Town is unique in a couple of different ways. All Our Town projects require a partnership between a nonprofit entity and a local government entity with endorsement from the community's highest ranking elected official. Projects should be explicitly community-driven and asset-based, reflective of unique community needs and desires, and incorporating local resources in the proposed project. And projects are often catalytic, an important arts-focused part of a broader planning or development effort. You might be wondering, what is creative placemaking? Simply put, creative placemaking looks at the role that arts and culture can play in community revitalization. The idea that arts and culture has a profound impact on the places we live is certainly not a new idea, but the terminology creative placemaking is relatively new. Over the past several years, the field has moved from quantifying economic impact to include broader issues around quality of life, deploying place-based strategies for improving health and wellness, transportation, housing, education, and community aesthetics and sense of identity. This is not just art for art's sake, and when we talk about artists, we are recognizing the artists in every community at all levels. So the first project I'm going to talk about is an award from 2014. It's the Chilkat Indian Village in Haines, Alaska. They were awarded an Our Town grant for a cultural landscape exhibition. The exhibit, created in partnership with artists, elders, and community members, was being designed as a precursor to a new cultural center that was in the works, the Chilkat Kwan Heritage Center. This image is a view from that Heritage Center, which opened in 2018, and which houses a version of the exhibition which we funded. The center has become an important place for tribal members to share their cultural practices with tourists and visitors, and perhaps more importantly, has become a hub for the community to gather with each other. We've also supported several related infrastructure-type projects on the Pine Ridge Reservation. In 2015, we awarded an Our Town grant to the Thunder Valley Community Development Corporation for the design of powwow grounds and artist studio and living spaces on the reservation. These new cultural facilities will provide much-needed space for Oglala Sioux members to exercise their creativity, develop new skills, and establish new artisan businesses. 2 years later, we made a related award to the First Peoples Fund for the design of the Oglala Lakota Arts and Business Incubator on Pine Ridge. I believe that construction project is underway and may even be complete. Once it's completed, the facility will support the development of a sustainable, reservation-based creative economy that addresses priorities expressed by the artists themselves. In both cases, these projects are partnerships between numerous entities from across the tribal community. And for the last Our Town case study, I'm going to do kind of a fly through some slides related to a recently completed project at Santo Domingo, or Kiowa Pueblo. These slides were provided by Joseph Kunkel, who was a key member of the project team. Joseph is a Northern Cheyenne tribal member and was working with the Pueblo as an Enterprise Rose Fellow during this project. That's an architecture fellowship program that runs for multiple years. He now runs an architecture nonprofit called Sustainable Native Communities. In 2012, the NEA made an Our Town award to the tribe for the creation of a cultural district plan and housing guidelines in anticipation of much-needed new housing development for the community. Here's a map of the area. You can see the new Domingo housing project, the rectangular shape on the right, and the existing village housing and main village on the left. Integral to the project is the Kiowa Rail Runner Station, which connects Santa Fe to Albuquerque and beyond. The Heritage Art Walk and the related restoration of the historic trading post, which is next to the Rail Runner Station, are intended to connect the new housing development with older parts of the Pueblo and also draw visitors from the station into the village. You can see the housing development here, which was designed by Joseph and Cole collaboratively with the tribe and other partners. And here's a photo of the built project, which is quite close to the rail runner station. They worked a lot with Native tribal members on the construction of the project, so it also became a great economic development force just in building the project. The reason I'm talking about this project is because the specific role that the Arts Endowment played in the project's development. The award was made at the beginning of the planning and design process and basically gave Joseph and the team time to focus on asset mapping, which led to the Arts Walk, and concept development before really diving into the housing design. Our funding was small, but it was catalytic in the overall project. The slide here shows funding for planning and design and money for the Arts Walk. And then here, the funding totals for the completed project with housing construction and the whole bit. So it's clearly a large project, but I think our role in that was catalytic in helping them really get rolling. And here you can see how it all fits together. Okay, so hopefully that got everybody's creative juices flowing and you're excited about this opportunity. Now I'm going to talk a little more, Cheryl and I together, about applicant eligibility and kind of how our application process works. We can fund nonprofit organizations, colleges and universities, local arts agencies, official units of state and government, school districts, and federally recognized tribal communities or tribes. There are certain requirements you must meet in order to be eligible to apply. You have to be a registered nonprofit at the time, or in the case of tribal government, established. You must have at least a 3-year history of arts programming, and you must be compliant with reporting requirements for previous Arts Endowment grants. So if you have open grants that have not been closed out properly, or you're behind on those things, then that has to be completed. And then you have to also provide that one-to-one cost share or match that we talked about earlier. And the match does have to be from non-federal funds. You can achieve it a lot of different ways. It can be staff time, it can be in kind or donated, it can be other foundations or other grants, just not federal money. The full list of types of projects that we do not fund is published in the guidelines on our website at arts.gov. But in general, that includes general operating support, so just money to keep doors open, as opposed to support for a specific project, which we can support. If you have overhead costs associated with a particular project, we can pay for that work. We just can't pay for general operating. Creation of new organizations, we only fund organizations that have been established and have their 501c3 and have that 3 years of history, even if some of that's before the 501c3 was awarded. We don't fund the awards of academic degrees. We don't fund facility construction, purchase, or renovation, although we can provide funding for the entire design process from initial conception through construction drawings. We don't fund individuals, except in literature and the honorifics, which Cheryl will talk a little bit about in a few minutes. We don't fund individual schools, although school districts are welcome. We don't fund commercial entities or for-profit enterprises, and we don't allow fiscal sponsors. Lots of no there. Sorry about that. Okay, and then in general, I'm just going to walk very quickly through the review process. The dates on this are, should have been updated to 2020, sorry about that, but they are reflective of the time frame for the grants for arts projects. It's a similar time frame, slightly shorter window for Challenge America and similar for our town. So it's in the range of 10 months from when you begin the process. So there's an application deadline. It's a 2-part process, which Cheryl will talk about in a minute. We do a public panel review process, public in that the people who are doing the review are from the field. And so dance projects are reviewed by people from the dance world. Design projects are reviewed by people who are either practicing designers or teach design or run a nonprofit that does work with design in some way. We do that process. We get feedback from the panel. and that determines a ranked list, which is what we use to determine how awards are allocated. We then take our projects to the National Council on the Arts, which is a presidentially appointed group of people from the arts world, and they review those grants and sign off on them, and then you'll hear from us a few weeks after that, or within 2 weeks after that, October or March meeting, and then you can start your project usually within a month or so of when that notification is made. So there's an opportunity to adjust your budget and make changes to things that might have changed over the long time leading up to when that award has been made. If applicants are not recommended for a grant, we encourage them to find out why by calling the appropriate discipline specialists. Panel comments are made available to applicants, and we share those with applicants. We feel strongly about helping applicants work through that process and understand more about what might have made a successful application. And often we see someone who doesn't succeed the first or maybe even second time, but does well later on with that feedback. Okay, and then all of this is done online. Everything is a web-based access. You can find information about the application on our website under the grants menu, apply for a grant, and from there you dive into organizations, and then you can see information about the 3 grant programs that we talked about, in addition to a research program, which we didn't dive into here today.
All right. Excuse me. So now we'll get into the application process and some very important nuts and bolts here, but I won't spend too much time on it. Before applying, you must register or renew your organization with the System for Awards Management, also known as SAM, and with grants.gov, the application portal for all federal grants. Registration can be a lengthy process, so we ask that you begin the registration and renewal process as soon as possible and have it completed at least 3 weeks before the application deadline. Both SAM and grants.gov have dedicated help desks that are available to assist you with the process. Once registered, the first step is to submit the SF-424 via grants.gov. Here, SF is short for short form. The SF-424 is a form that asks for some basic information about your organization and the project. There are specific SF-424s for each grant opportunity, so make sure you are using the correct one by accessing it from our website. You'll also want to submit the SF-424 at least 10 days before the deadline in order to address any issues that may arise. And I'll go back. The second step is to submit the rest of your application materials, including a detailed project narrative, budget information, and work samples through the Arts Endowment Applicant Web Portal. The Applicant Portal is a web form, so you will not have access to it until the specific application window opens for your grant opportunity. But we post the detailed instructions and guidelines on our website well in advance, so you can prepare your materials before the application window opens. The instructions do differ by opportunity and discipline, so make sure that you have the correct instructions. And then here are some helpful hints that we can go over. Again, you'll want to complete your registrations as soon as possible. And if you're already registered, please check to make sure the registration won't expire before the deadline. And then something we can't reiterate enough is please contact our staff with any questions that you might have. We all want to hear from you, and we're eager to assist you throughout the process. And you'll want to work with the discipline program specialist that applies to the discipline of the project that you're applying for. And if you're not sure, please just choose a discipline that you think is closest to the project, and we'll help you to determine the right discipline for you and your project. We also conduct webinars for each funding opportunity each year. You can see an archive of past webinars on our website and sign up for upcoming webinars. And the webinars address current guidelines and frequently asked questions. Once the grants are approved by our chairman, we announce them publicly. That means you can have access to all the recent grants through our grant search tool on our website, in addition to the grants that we went over earlier in this presentation. Additionally, we post selected application narratives from recently funded applications for each program, so you can get a sense of what a successful application looks like. Oh, and I want to just reiterate what Courtney said, is that you can request feedback on recommended and rejected applications, and I strongly encourage all applicants to utilize this. It can really help to improve your next application. And now I'd like to introduce a national initiative program that we call the National Heritage Fellowships. It was created in 1982 by advocate, educator, and producer Bess Lomax Hawes, and it is the nation's highest honor in the folk and traditional arts. There have been 440 fellowships that have been awarded to date, and these fellowships recognize America's foremost vernacular artists and celebrate outstanding stewardship of living traditions. We award up to 9 fellowships every year. One of the fellowships is called the Bess Lomax Hawes Fellowship, and it recognizes someone who has contributed to the excellence, vitality, and public appreciation of folk and traditional arts. This nominee must be worthy of national recognition and actively engage in perpetuating the traditional arts. This is a nomination process, and one may nominate an individual or a group, such as a duo or ensemble, but not an incorporated organization, to receive a $25,000 fellowship award. The date of the deadline has not yet been released, but you can expect it to be in late July of this year for a 2021 Heritage Fellowship. Let's see. And the National Heritage Fellowship is also one of the ways that we highlight our folk and traditional arts masters. And we define folk and traditional arts as expressive culture that is rooted in and reflective of the cultural community, of the cultural life of a community, where community members share a common ethnic heritage, language, religion, occupation, geographic region, etc. These are artistic traditions that are shaped by values and standards of excellence that are passed down from generation to generation and generally learned within family and community through demonstration, conversation, and practice. The selection criteria for all fellowships are artistic excellence, significance within a particular tradition, and contributions to living cultural heritage. Here are a few examples of Native American and Alaska Native Heritage Fellows who have received the National Heritage Fellowships. Lauren Balmon is a Tolowa tradition bearer who received a National Heritage Fellowship in 2002 for his preservation, practice, and promotion of Tolowa cultural traditions, including its language, native regalia, ceremonial dances and songs, and basket making out of the Northern California region, Crescent City, California. In 2006, Dolores Churchill is a Haida Master Cedar Bark Basket Weaver and Living Treasure from Ketchikan, Alaska, who received her National Heritage Fellowships. She was taught by her mother at a young age and was one of the very few youth learning the traditional way of weaving. Today, she has continued her mother's legacy as a teacher, teaching Haida, blanket, and Tishiman forms of weaving, using such materials as spruce root, cedar bark, wool, and natural dyes. She creates baskets, hats, robes, and other regalia. And our 2016 National Heritage Fellow, Theresa C Cord, received the Heritage Fellowship as the co-founder of the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance, which we highlighted earlier. The Alliance, as you know, mobilizes basket makers of the Wabanaki tribes of Maine. Under her leadership, the Alliance is credited with lowering the average age of basket makers in Maine from the age of 63 to 40, and increasing numbers of weavers from 55 to 200. She is also an award-winning master basket maker who still uses the basket molds that she inherited from her great-grandmother. And I'll hand it over to Courtney.
All right. And this is just a really brief kind of wrap-up to our presentation here, and then we'll dive into questions. So if you have questions that you've been hanging on to, it's a great time to go ahead and start posting those. I want to lift up just one additional opportunity. This is the Citizens Institute on Rural Design. This is an initiative of the agency that we do in partnership with a nonprofit organization. In this case, we're running the program with the Housing Assistance Council. And the program is designed to provide technical assistance to rural communities across the country. Since its inception in 1991, CIRD has convened more than 80 workshops in all regions of the country with results that range from strengthening local economies, enhancing rural character, leveraging cultural assets, and designing recreational trails. One of our current workshops is actually with the Pueblo of Laguna. That's going to be taking place in May, towards the end of May, to do a design of a community. It's basically a Main Street study, but it's going to the main focus is going to be a sort of plaza space where they will have farmer markets and other kind of gathering space on the context of their Main Street. So that's exciting. That's coming up. We also have worked with several other tribal communities. We worked with the Ile-de-Jean Charles Band of Choctaw. I know I butchered that, and I apologize. In Louisiana, they are one of the tribal communities that's been very affected by sea level rise in Louisiana. And then the image here is from a workshop we did in Akwesasne Mohawk Territory in 2016, working with them to look at how they could bring Mohawk identity into graphic design in their community, so looking at design standards for buildings and roadways and signage and the landscape itself that would make their presence and their culture more visible in the context of drawing more people to the area. So just want to raise that as an opportunity. If you're interested in just following what CIRD does, we have a website you can go to. The website is Rural Design, rural-design.org. And we do have a newsletter that goes out more or less monthly, and are hosting some webinars about project management and project development right now. And then there'll be an opportunity to apply, again, to be part of our program probably in early 2021. We have started a new part of this program. We have the workshops, which are dedicated to particular communities, but then we've also started what we're calling a learning cohort, which brings together about 20 different communities to learn from each other, kind of a peer learning environment, and also get some of the technical assistance at a little higher level that we're offering for the workshops. So I think with that, that covers our questions, or our official content for you guys. But we're happy to take questions either here or separately if there's a way for Glenda to capture those and email them to us. We're certainly happy to address any questions that you've got.
Well, thank you for providing us with that valuable information on grant programs and fellowship offered by NAA, Courtney and Cheryl. The questions that we have, actually we have one question right now from Dawn Melvin from the Arizona Department of Tourism. And her question is, are art event/festival projects limited to one-time applications?
Yeah, our programs, the way that our grant opportunities are designed is that you're applying in 1 year for a particular project with a period of performance is what we call it. So you have to say in what time of this project that these funds will be supporting. So if it's a festival that's happening possibly in the following year, will we be supporting the festival as it's happening? Are we supporting the artists of the festival? Are we supporting the lead up to the festival or exhibitions, or maybe all of those things, or after? So there is a time period that's specifically designed in the way that our grants are awarded.
But
makes sense.
But organizations can come in year after year for the same program.
Yes, right.
So even if it's only funding one iteration of the festival or the event, you can come in year after year for the same program, and many of our grantees do that. Or we have many grantees who come in year after year for different things, depending on the nature of that organization, and others who come in year after year for the same program, as long as it's a discrete period of time, as Cheryl described.
Right.
They can we encourage people, once you've kind of got that formula and you've figured out how to navigate the application process,
right,
we encourage you to continue to come back.
So an annual event would qualify as part of that, having that recurring support, correct?
Yes, there's no guarantee it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
It is a new panel process every year, new panelists. But we found, I think, often when an organization has kind of cracked the nut on what it takes to write a good application, that they are often successful year after year.
Okay. And let's see, Fawn Silas has logged in from Anchorage, Alaska, and her question is, what project ideas are provided for museums?
I can start with that, and then Cheryl, if you have other things to add. So we have a museums category, and definitely that is the primary things that are supported in the museums category are exhibitions or programming. So you may have educational programming around an exhibition, or it might be the exhibition itself, or it might be a publication related to it. So just straight up coming in, museums often do come into the museums category. That said, we do often support exhibitions or museum-sponsored work in other disciplines. In my field, for example, in design, we often have applications from museums that are interested in doing a design-focused exhibition. And so we collaborate internally. Ideally, you guys have been in touch with us ahead of time. But if not, if we get an application that's in the museums category, but it really fits very tightly into a discipline-specific approach, we might shift it, with your agreement, we would potentially shift it from museums to the design category. Mm-hmm. So you can come into any discipline museums are welcome anywhere in the agency. A lot really just depends on what you're trying to do, what your project is.
Right. And here I'll just, this is where I'll plug our grant search tool on our website. And I can't think of how to get there now, but when you get to that tool, you're able to really drill down and search for museums as a discipline and projects that you perhaps have in mind, and you could just sort of put in keywords and pull up things from as far back as I think the 80s, but you can also drill it down to the last few years as well, just to sort of see the kinds of projects that have been successful, and you get a snapshot similar to what you heard from us today, a very short sort of 3 or 4 sentences about what that project was about.
Mm-hmm. And the menu for that, if you go to our website, arts.gov, you can go to grants and then recent grants. And under recent grants, there's a click box that you can go through that will take you through to a map, as well as where you can enter the search term Cheryl was describing.
Okay, great. I think we've covered the questions that were presented in the chat box. So if you have any additional questions, you may email them to myself, Courtney, or Cheryl, and we'll get them answered offline. My email address is gtoledo@ianta.org. Again, it's gtoledo@aianta.org, and you'll find Courtney and Cheryl's email addresses on your screen. We'll be posting the slides and the recording of this webinar on the IANTA website in the next few days. Our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, April 7th. Our presenter then will be Commissioner Jenny Hovland from the Administration for Native Americans. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Have a great day, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, we got a lot of thank yous on the chat, so I made so yeah. So we have all the questions answered, and
okay, great.
Okay, sounds great.
Well,
we'll definitely
thanks again, Courtney.
Any questions? Yeah.
I will. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.